Welcome back to Scouting for Growth. Today, we are exploring one of the most important and least understood shifts happening in AI right now, the rise of agentic AI. Systems that don't just predict, but perceive, reason, and act on behalf of an organization. And is why this conversation matters. According to the latest SAS and IDC Global Data and AI Impact Report, 78% of organizations say they fully trust AI, 200% more than machine learning models. Yet, only 40% have invested to make their systems demonstrably trustworthy. Nearly half of all companies, and that is 46%, are caught in what analysts call the trust dilemma, where confidence in AI far exceeds its actual reliability. And while 52% have adopted agentic AI, most still lack the governance, data quality, and skills to scale it safely and effectively. That is where my guest today comes in. Marinela Profi is a global AI and generative AI market strategy lead at SAS, a data scientist and strategist who helps global enterprises from banks to governments build AI that people can trust. At SAS, she's leading the conversation on agentic AI, showing how intelligent agents with embedded governance, explainability, and human AI balance can transform how decisions are being made. Maya is also, for many other, I'm sure you know, a public speaker, published author, and advisory board member, shaping the next generation of AI education, and a passionate advocate for responsible innovation. In today's episode, we will discuss why LLMs alone don't solve business problems and what does, how governance is becoming the new frontier for AI trust, and what leaders should expect by 2026 as enterprises shift from experiments to autonomous, explainable intelligence. Marina, welcome to Scouting for Growth. I'm so thrilled to have you with me today. I cannot wait to unpack this future with you. Hello. So thrilled to have with me Marinela Profi from SAS. Hi, Marinela. Thrilled to have you today to speak about a big topic, right? The hot topic of the quarter, right? Which is agentic AI. Welcome.
Hi, Sabine. Such a pleasure to be here with you.
Thrilled to have you today to dive into some of the constraints and opportunities that exist around generative AI. I think we are going to talk about big shift as much as a major topic here around intelligent systems. And we actually are going to explain to people to listening to us today how technology can predict and prevent, but also perceive, reason, and act on their own. Some stats. You guys have been putting some interesting research, right, with IDC, data and AI impact studies, and I have to highlight some of these numbers. 78% of organizations say they trust artificial intelligence. But I remember talking to Franklin and said, Sabine, is 200% more than machine learning. Well, it is wrong, right, when you think about it. Yet, only 40% have actually made it trustworthy. And so we are going to dive into what that means, which means nearly half are stuck in what we call an AI trust dilemma. So, Marinela, how are we going to move from hype to reality and reliability when we think about artificial intelligence? So my first question to you is about demystifying that buzz, right? That hype. When business leaders today ask, how is an AI agent different from an GenAI chatbot? And we all using chatbot in our everyday. What is your 90-second answer to help people make the right decision?
Okay, I love that we're starting from the basis. And I would say that a generative AI chatbot is really good at answering questions, generating text or summarizing a content, but it typically stops when it comes to conversation, right? So an AI agent, on the other hand, goes beyond that. It can take action. So it has goals, it has memory, it has reasoning capabilities, and can orchestrate multi-step workflows using a combination of not just large language models, but also rules, data, and analytics. So that's really where the distinction lies. Generative AI talks, I like to say, and agentic AI does, right?
The does versus the thinking here is important, and you have been writing a lot about that. I've been stalking you a little bit, if you don't mind me saying that. And I read one of your recent article around the 5 steps life cycle for an agent, and I would love for you to dive into that. I believe there is perception, cognition, decision, action, and learning. So can you walk us through what this is and help us understand how that works in real time, maybe with a banking example? I mean, we talk about credit, fraud, which everybody understands. Could you help us understand how that works?
Absolutely. So, first of all, let me start by what is the 5-step life cycle of an agent, right? It was a framework that I put together to really help me and my customers understand what an agent actually does, right? Step by step in practice. And so, the first phase is the perception phase. So, the agent is all about what's happening, right? It perceives incoming data. And if we want to say for a real-time fraud example, let's say it perceives credit card transaction in real time, it ingests signals like IP addresses, transaction amounts, location, devices IDs, and so that's the first part, right? Now, a common point, a common denominator of each phase of the 5-step life cycle of an agent, that it's the most important thing, to my opinion, when we talk about AI agents in general, is the governance. So where the governance attaches in each step, right? So the governance plays a role in each of these 5 steps. It's not like something that comes after or only at the beginning, but you have it throughout the entire life cycle of the agent. So in the perception phase, data privacy and security rules apply in this case, right? Sensitive data must be masked or tokenized. Agents must only be authorized and have access to compliant data sources and aligned with standards like GDPR or HIPAA. The second phase, the cognition phase, is all about what does this mean. So once I've ingested the data, I've perceived incoming data. The agent reasons over the data, so it evaluates patterns. It detects anomalies using trained fraud models or past customer behaviors, and maybe large language models for natural language insights from analyst notes. I'm saying maybe LLMs because I don't think that an agent, in order to be an agent, needs to have an LLM by any means, right? So I always go back to this definition, which is agents are a combination of different techniques, LLMs, AI, machine learning models, traditional rule-based analytics, memory, reasoning. So it's not just an LLM that makes the decisions across the board. The third phase is the decisioning. So now, once the agent has basically reasons over the data, or has evaluated patterns or anomalies, for example, in the fraud detection system, now it selects a course of action. So this phase is all about, okay, what should I do, right? So, for example, it flags the transaction, or it blocks it, or it escalates it to a human, or just lets it pass. So here it blends the machine learning output with business rules. Business rule could be don't block the VIP customers, or allow some small value risk, right? And this phase is really, the governance becomes so important because you need transparent and explainable decision logic, not just black box predictions. So the agent must follow some deterministic guardrails here, and log every step for auditability. The fourth step is action. So the agent now is, okay, what should I do? I know what I should do. Let's do it, right? So the agent executes the decision. So it blocks the transaction, it sends an alert, it initiates a verification text, for example. And the last but not least is the learning. So what did I learn, right? So post action, the agent basically learns from feedback. Was the fraud confirmed? Was it actually a fraud, or did I mess up as an agent? Did a human override the decision that I made? So what it does is basically the learning is not the final step, but it's the beginning of the entire loop again, because it updates its models, it updates the logic to improve the future outcomes. And so it's really important to also monitor the learning loops, because you cannot allow the agent to self-update in ways that are uncontrolled. And at SAS, we enable monitoring and governance across the entire life cycle of the AI agents.
So here we have, probably a workflow, processes, and activities taking place. And every step we need to look at the governance components, how it's looking at your framework, perception, cognition, decision, action, and learning. So my next question is, how autonomous should an agent be? Marinela, right?
That's the $1 million question. And I love how that has changed. The answer to that in conversations that I've had with customers and partners and just passionates have changed over since the beginning of 2025. We started the year by saying agents are fully autonomous entities, and now we're like, no, wait, that's actually can get very dangerous. And so, to your question, how autonomous should an agent be? My answer is going to be it's probably 90% of the times the answers are, it depends. It depends on the risk and impact of the task. There are two factors, risk and impact of a task. So in my job at SAS, I guide customers to calibrate agent autonomy using a risk-based framework. So for example, low-risk tasks, agent can act fully autonomously. Think about recommending content or auto-filling fields or summarizing emails. That's an easy one. Medium risk tasks, you need to use a human in the loop. So the agent recommends a decision, but a human approves it before execution, before the action. For high risk tasks, you require a human on the loop, I like to call it, which means that the agent may execute with continuous monitoring or simply just assist a human who stays in full control. So why does this matter? This is really important to have this risk-based framework, because I always say autonomy without accountability is a risk multiplier, right? So you cannot just worry about, is my agent smart? You need to build it with governance by design, because that's how you are going to scale it without sacrificing trust, compliance, or even human judgment, which let's not forget that it's still the most important thing.
Yeah. So governance by design, I think this is a very important term. Another one I've heard from the SAS team is trust by design. So governance and trust are aligned with one another. Another concept which is very important for people to remember right now, we are talking about human in the loop. We always talk about human in the loop, but we also have human on the loop and human out of the loop, right? It's all about controls. So Marinela, looking at 2026, I remember, 5 years ago when I started working a little bit around the sustainability and what that meant, we moved from CSR to having sustainability board. So
Mhm.
you see, an agent governance board being shaped up in the corporation out there that we're working with in 2026.
I love that question, Sabine, because it's I always love to see about like what's going to happen in the future and have some predictions by looking at the past and what the past has taught us so far. The agent governance board, I find it a very fascinating concept, because I think that we are going to get to a point where companies and enterprises are going to need to have a board that just talks about the agent governance. And to my opinion, this board will not just review models, they will actually govern full AI agents, right? Operating with varying levels of autonomy. And that means to me, really things like quarterly reviews that will need to go beyond just accuracy metrics, but they will look holistically at different areas, and things like the agent portfolio, the risk tiering. So what are the agents that are operative, what they're allowed to do, how autonomous they're based on the task risk. The things like documentation will be very key. The boards will expect to have agent cards, like model cards, detailing each agent's purpose, data sources that it's using, decision logic, version history. And that transparency is really going to be a key and foundational for the trust component. Other things are going to be like the board will review performance, fairness, robustness. Are agents drifting? Are we introducing bias in any way, right? Is the agent behaving unpredictably? So this will include things like overriding by humans, escalation logs. And so this is a very important piece, because at SAS, we always emphasize that governance doesn't stop at deployment, right? Performance must be continuously monitoring. And that's a very important. And finally, I think that governance boards in 2026, they will act more like digital oversight committees, right? They're going to ensure basically that agents are not just smart, but they're safe, explainable, and accountable. It's going to be a big, important mindset shift that enterprises will encounter.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Partly when we start looking at the impact, right? The impact of these technologies. And I can feel listening to you that probably that board will probably be a much more technical board than it is a business board. And it will be probably a balance between the two. Now I want to understand how value is being created with agents. And whether we think about insurance, banking, use cases, maybe retail, e-commerce, there is so much happening right now. So how are we moving first with agentic artificial intelligence, and why? Can you compare maybe some of the key processes which are happening out there, collecting operations, collection operations, smart documentation, and that is the big conversation I'm continuously having, for example, in insurance, smart documentation, summarization, commercial lending, think that people understand how, those rule-based agents are going to operate in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So use cases are a big topic, right? Like every time I speak to an executive or every level, actually, not just executive, the conversation quickly goes to, okay, what are the use cases, right? So what are the ones that are being more successful, that are moving faster, that are moving first with agentic AI? So when it comes to banking, I would say so collections operations to me is the one that it's moving fastest, because in terms of has a high value, and so for those of you that might be new to collection operations, in the collection functions, basically we're talking about delinquencies or loan recovery, debt servicing. An AI agent can autonomously segment accounts, prioritize outreach strategies, or decide which channel or time to contact, escalate when needed, update plans in real time. And this is moving first because it's, first of all, it's high volume. It has a lot of repetitive work. So it's very good for automation. I always say the use cases that have a lot of repetitive, high volume work are the best candidate for agentic AI. Second, there is a clear cost saving when it comes to this use case, right? So the business case is easier to make at the board level. And the third, many banks already have data and rules. So just layering an agent is very feasible, right? The second use case, I would say that is moving faster after the collection operation is a smart documentation for commercial lending. So what that is that in commercial lending, you have huge volumes on unstructured documents. Think about loan applications, collateral documents, inspections, draw requests. So an AI agent can ingest those documents, extract meaning, evaluate completeness and compliance, trigger workflow steps like, oh, there is a missing document, this needs to be reviewed, this exception. And the reason why this use case is moving fast is because lending still has many manual bottlenecks. So document intensive processes, again, are primed for automation and agentic assistance. But the speed to value is not fast, is medium fast, I would say, because this one requires a stronger integration. So more complexity than the collection, because here you need document ingestion, you need natural language processes, you need workflows. So it's a little bit more difficult from an integration standpoint, but it's still fairly high in the ROI.
So let's look at the levels of automation, right? And I think you have a framework called the levels of automation framework, where we already talked about human in the loop, human are on the loop, and human out of the loop. So when we look at your example around banking now, what are the banking tasks you see in 2026 which are going to be autonomous tasked agents, and where do we need supervision still and have those humans helping us make those decisions?
Okay, I love that question. You're making such great questions today. I love them. So I think that by 2026, we'll see more banking tasks shift toward full or near full autonomy, but only where the stakes are low and the logic is very well defined. So, for example, collection operations and payment instruction validation are already moving toward out of the loop autonomy. These are high volume, they're rule based processes where agents can reliably act without needing too much human intervention unless there is an exception. Document processing and commercial lending is another area going agentic. AI can now read, extract, route documentations automatically. On the flip side, high risk tasks should stay supervised. An example is credit underwriting, for example, for large loans or fraud alerts, anti money laundering investigations, model validation for regulatory compliance. These decisions, they carry regulatory, ethical, or financial consequences. So even if an agent supports the process, a human needs, should approve, override, or monitor. So the trick is going to be to calibrate autonomy based on, again, the task risk and of the use case. And this is how I see the use cases being positioned, in the loop or out the loop.
Yeah, no, fascinating here because I'm thinking as well about the industry has spent a lot more time in, which is insurance, and there's so much regulation, so there is a lot of question being asked as to how far can we be truly autonomous, and should we, right? Partly when we start looking at an industry which relies on relationship and trust. So for you, Marinela, what would an enterprise ready integration look like? We have a lot of data in banking, we have a lot of data in insurance, and the conversation I'm having most of the time right now is the data accuracy, the data structure challenge, even though we have a lot of data. So how that look like from a data access, workflow orchestration, guardrail lineage, containers, when we start thinking about the banking sector, but finance in general, what are we underestimating maybe?
Well, I think where banks underestimate work is in integration complexity. So it's not the agent that's hard to build. The agent is very easy to build. It's everything around it. So the security, the compliance, the data engineering, the governance that makes it safe and scalable. For example, data access. You mentioned data access. Agents must securely access not just structured but also unstructured data from core systems, and this include real-time streaming, APIs. There is a lot there. You mentioned workflow orchestration, right? So AI agents need to trigger and respond to events in complex multi-step workflows. So in a bank, that might mean kicking off a risk review, sending documentation for electronic signature, or escalating to a human approver. So this is all part of the workflow orchestration. These are components that sometimes they're just not thought at the beginning, but then when the time comes and they're encountered, the entire process stops for a long time because now you need to integrate it afterwards. The other part is the guardrails. You mentioned that, I think, right? So having agents that operate within predefined business rules. Don't, like I always say, don't this is not about being less innovative. Like, don't look at this or like as, oh, I'm not building the rocket science, or I'm not building nothing cool. No, that this shouldn't be cool. This should be trusted. It should be safe. It should be reliable, because you're operating in such a highly regulated industry. And at the end of the day, your goal is to make sure that you have competitive advantage over in the long term, not just now and building some cool toy that maybe is going to make the bylines, but then after 2 or 3 weeks is going to be on the negative side of the bylines, right? So the complexity of integrating different components, I think it's being underestimated the most.
Yeah, fascinating. So looking at those leaders who are there, and most of them want to move very fast. I mean, all of them, I think it's like, okay,
Who
we need to be
doesn't?
ready by the end of the year, right? So what are the 2 or 3 KPIs would say? People, let's just maybe think, but then let's measure as well. What would be the KPIs you would like them to pay attention to?
Okay, so I mean, for business leaders who, well, first of all, moving fast is everybody's desire, and most of the time when we hear about agentic AI, the first question is, okay, what's the ROI? Where's the money? Like, how much money am I going to save? How much time am I going to save? I always like to say that there are the ROI formula. I think the traditional ROI systems and formulas are going to fail when it comes to justifying the investment in agentic AI. And the reason is because there are things that you can measure, but there are benefits that you cannot measure today. And I'm going to give you an example. In the early 20s, when the internet came, right, everybody would tell you, if you don't have a website, you are going to go bankrupt, right? Nobody could measure what was the ROI of having a website, but everybody knew that if you didn't have it, you were going to become outdated. So we are going to see we already similar inflection point right now, where when it comes to agentic AI, you have, I call it the pyramid of the ROI, right? The first layer is the efficiency layer, and those are the things that are easy to measure. Things like cost saved, time saved, the KPIs in terms of, okay, like how much did I reduce the loan processing time, right? How much did I drop the average days to execute some sort of process? But stopping there in just to justify the value of agentic AI would be like showing and measuring the value of the electronic mail, the email, by how many letters did it save.
Which is, yeah, you would not do that.
It's so much more than that. Like, the email is so much more than that, just like how many letters did I not send in person. And so there is the operational layer, and there is the innovation layer. Like, how is this investment going to prepare us to be competitive and ready in the next 5 years, right? So what should I invest now in the next 5 years? Because I expect my customer base to start to interact differently, to have different expectations from my sector, from a bank or from an insurer. And so that's where the real value multiplies. It's harder to justify, but is ultimately what is going to make the biggest impact.
Yeah. And, as I'm listening to you, thinking about the biggest impact, we have read those research paper in recent months, right? During the summer, a lot of pilots are not going to production, whether it's MIT or HBR or BCG, number between 95%, 88%, which, to be honest, they are big numbers. But I don't think that is what is the most important around those numbers, is that we have a lot of pilot going on, and we have maybe fewer of those pilots going into production. And when I read your study, right, with IDC, that showed that there is a 46% trust dilemma. So I would like to go into that, because there's a clear misalignment between trust and actual trustworthiness out there. And the paper cites data centralization, governance, and upskilling, reskilling our teams to be able to, not be the broker of the transformation. So if you could only fund 3 things next year, what would you prioritize?
Well, this I would say this is, as you said, that's a 46% gap between perceived trust and actual trustworthiness is a big red flag. And it's actually showing up in every boardroom. So if I had to fund just three fixes, I'd probably say to prioritize. The first is data centralization that has access control. So without consistent, governed access to high quality data, you are never going to have an agent that is trustworthy. So invest in centralized data layers with fine grained and role based access, especially for regulated domains like finance, like insurance, like banking. The second piece is governance. So AI governance, embedded governance, right? At design time. So since phase zero, don't think about it later, but think about how governance plays in each step of the process. What is the governance hook in each step of the process? So I would say, capabilities and platforms that invest in platforms that offer lineage tracking, version control, escalation thresholds, decision transparency out of the box, things that we are offering today with SaaS Via, which is our platform. And the
Yeah.
third is the upskilling for agent oversight, not just AI literacy, right? So AI literacy is a big piece. Like you need to invest in people upskilling on AI in general, but upskilling for agent oversight, because this isn't about learning to code an LLM. This is about helping domain experts, which have a great domain expertise, and you need that, like risk officers, business leaders, understand how an agent works, where to intervene, where to not intervene, right? How to spot drifts, how to or what is the misuse. And so really I would invest in cross-functional training programs focused on human in, on, out of the loop, not just generative AI demos.
Yeah, not only generative AI demos. And I think that is the key word, because there's a lot of lipstick on the pig going on right now, and we need to make sure we can go into executions. So what I hear as well as I'm listening to you, Marinela, is the operating model of the organization is going to change. I can hear that probably we'll need different roles or different stakeholders owning and managing this type of initiative. I can hear maybe a chief agentic AI officer alongside a chief governance officer working together. So for you, what operating model has worked so far within the industry we serve? Who will own that agent orchestration, the risk and compliance sign off, the prompt knowledge management, right? How do we make sure that there is enough explainability, transparency, all those keywords we use when we think about agent, generative AI in general, into day-to operations?
Yeah, so operating models are going to be a big conversation for AI agents. I think what I've seen working the best is that the best operating model. Probably some people are going to not like this, but it treats agents like employees, which doesn't mean that an agent is a human, because it absolutely is not. We're not replacing humans. Agents will work with humans, but in the moment that you're onboarding an agent, in the moment that you decide to invest in an agent within your organization, you should treat it as an asset, as one of your assets. Employees are an organization's asset. So you should not treat the agent any differently. It should be trained, it should be monitored, it should be governed, it should be accountable. And take accountable. So with receipts. And what are those receipts, right? For employees, we have some receipts. For agents, we have things like model cards, agent cards, data and decision lineage tracking, real-time explainability, especially for agents that generate decisions that affect customers, loan, or transactions. And so really, we're going to see new roles, I think, emerging, especially for the agent orchestration part. So probably having a central AI MLOps team or a digital transformation unit that it's responsible for workflow integration, for chaining agents across tasks, setting autonomy levels, to make sure that agents don't become siloed bots, but enterprise grade system. So that I think, there is an emerging hybrid function between data product owners and knowledge managers that I think is going to be the prompt and knowledge management. So in highly regulated industries, prompt and RAG sources, they need to be versioned, approved, tied to lineage. So I do foresee the need for a specific figure and role that just really is all about this hybrid figure, that it's all about prompt and knowledge management.
Yeah, I can hear that, we have this head of HR Asian workforce coming into the organization, right? Because now we have probably a dual hybrid workforce we need to manage. So looking at 2026, let's go into a bit of prediction right now, Marinela. What do you think are going to surprise most the leaders of tomorrow, or at least the leaders going into 2026? Hybrid, composite, AI architecture. I think we need to start with the AI architecture if you want to get this right. In any case, standardization of autonomy tiering as well might be something they need to consider. And you have highlighted the agent governance boards. What would a normal C-suite need to think about practically?
Well, if I have to place bets for 2026, I think that what's going to surprise more the leaders, isn't just what AI can do; it's what they'll be expected to govern. So they will have so much to think about in terms of like a governance of this. So first, I would say that the first surprise is that a hybrid architecture, that it's LLMs plus machine learning plus rules, is going to become the default architecture. So where LLM works alongside deterministic rules and classic machine learning, it will become the new enterprise norm. This shift is already underway, but the surprise will be how essential these architectures are to trust. And that's what we're missing. So enterprises will realize that LLMs alone cannot make reliable decisions. They do not solve business problems. I've been saying this for 2 years now, without grounding guardrails. And we're going to see those guardrails becoming part of the architecture. Second, we're going to see the rise, I think, of standardized autonomy tiers. So we're going to have very clear organization-wide definitions of when agents can act alone, when they must escalate, when they can only assist. This will not be an option anymore. So banks and insurers especially will need this structure to pass any audit and scale responsibly. But the real shock will come in the boardroom, because by the second half of 2026, I believe most large enterprises will have a formal agent governance board. Just like they have a data or cybersecurity committee,
Yeah.
it will review, which agents are operating, what decisions are making, what guardrails are in place. So it won't be just a tech conversation anymore. The agentic AI, it won't be just a technical conversation, it will be a business accountability conversation.
Yeah. Business accountability conversation. And so looking at my last question to you, Marinela, if I were a CIO or a chief digital officer, and I know many of them amazing chief digital officers out there, trying to make scratch their head to actually make sure that they can gain the efficiency, but also they can actually achieve the growth, right? Because agentic AI is not just about efficiency saving, it's about new product and services, it's about automation, but it's also about augmentation. So what would be the checklist, AI checklist you would have on a one pager for them to make sure that they are prepared to go into 2026 well prepared, and which are going to be the three items you'd say, by Q1, people, you need to have done that, and you are going to be in good place.
Oh, this is a very cool question. I might actually end up creating a blog post on my LinkedIn after on this checklist. I love it. Agentic AI checklist. I would say if I were sitting down, and it happens to me a lot with a CIO or a CDO today, I would tell them agentic AI is not just a technology project anymore. It is a trust infrastructure challenge. That's what it has become. It has become a true trust infrastructure challenge. So your 2026 checklist needs to cover, I would say, 3 core domains. The first, foundations. So you need clean, centralized data pipelines and very tight access controls. So if your agents are ingesting or retrieving from the wrong sources, everything downstream is compromised. This includes everything, access logs, metadata, like everything is going to be compromised. So first, foundations. The second, I repeat this every day, governance. Governance is not negotiable. Every agent needs a model card or an agent card that documents its purpose, documents training data, limitations, autonomy level. And again, this should start at design, not post-design, not post-deployment. And finally, operations is where trust really breaks down if you're not prepared. So you need measurable KPIs, not just for performance, but for oversights as well. Even how many employees have been trained to manage and supervise agents, like that will become a KPI in your operations. So I would say, dear CIO, CDO, if you could do only 3 things in Q1 to avoid the trust dilemma, here's where I would start. First, define and publish your autonomy tiers. So there's clarity on when agents can act, escalate, or assist. Mandate agent cards for every production agent so your team can prove what an agent is doing and why. And third, run your first kill switch drill, because if you cannot stop an agent under pressure, you're not enterprise ready. So this is the formula. And now after that answer, I will definitely make a post about this on my LinkedIn.
I can't wait to read it because it's going to be the checklist to get ready in 2026. The foundation. You have said that to me before, right? Foundation governance. But you're looking at the operation and making sure that everything is really well set for success. The guardrail, the lineage, and the kill switch as well need to be there to make sure that we can stop it when something is going wrong. So Marinela, if people want to continue that conversation with you, where should they go?
Well, definitely they can follow me on LinkedIn. They can find me as Marinela Profi. I highly recommend that you check the Data and AI study on sas.com/trust. And you can find all about the report where we interviewed over 2,000 leaders about their state of data and AI, what they're trusting, what challenges they're having. I definitely, recommend to check that out. And then sas.com/agentic AI. It's always a good place to start to learn everything that we're doing at SAS and my team is doing at SAS with regards to agentic AI.
Yeah, and
last but not least, SAS Innovate 2026 is coming. So bookmark, check it out, come join us. We'll have a lot of announcements from SAS, our partners, and we look for our customers, and we'll look forward to having you there.
Yeah, SAS Innovate. Gosh, already SAS Innovate 2026.
I know.
I know. The whole year around now, right?
I know. But the call for content is already open. Like it's already open, so people can submit their content already.
That's super cool. But what I also want you to add is a lot of my education around AI go and get it from the SaaS platform, so the SaaS website, whether it's Generative AI, hallucination, all these great definition and really understanding how the AI work, trust, dilemma, and so on and so forth is on the website. So I would recommend everybody to actually look at the website as a resource and actually to get prepared for 2026. So Marinela, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Sabine. Have a good one. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Scouting for Growth. Please subscribe, share with friends, and leave a 5-star rating. Your rating is so valuable. I review all of them, and my team help me adapt content to meet your needs. Also, connect with me on my preferred channels. I am a B2B growth expert, so you will find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Threads, and X as well as Blue Sky. All information available below. Until next, keep scouting for growth.